What if the foundation of modern medicine was not laid on cadavers, but on the living bodies of the condemned? What? The very roots of medical science were intertwined with brutality and forced experimentation. Imagine a world where knowledge came from the suffering of others. A time in the 3rd century BCE, under the rule of the Ptolemies in Hellenistic Egypt, when Alexandria became a dark hub of anatomical research and moral transgression. Greek physicians, Herophilos and Erasistratus, were pioneers in medicine. Their discoveries were groundbreaking, but at what cost? What if the knowledge that revolutionized modern science was acquired by dissecting the living? Herophilos and Erasistratus were granted permission by the Ptolemaic kings to perform vivisections. The dissection of living humans and the subjects of their experiments were not volunteers. They were condemned. Criminals forced to undergo horrific procedures not out of consent, but out of a cruel fate to become anatomical specimens. Their bodies opened up to study their organs, the circulatory system, the nervous system, the digestive system, veins, and arteries distinguished parts of the brain identified. This was how the first discoveries in anatomy were made. These living beings were treated as mere objects. To study their pain was disregarded, their humanity forgotten. One said to cut open the living is more profitable than the dead. His more profitable than the dead, his words reflected the chilling reality that to him and his contemporaries human life was expendable. If it meant advancing knowledge, for centuries humanity had been searching for answers to the body and its functions, and in their quest for understanding they lost all sense of ethics. Herophilos and Erasistratus may have been the fathers of anatomy, but their work was stained with the blood of those they used as their tools. Their names are immortalized in medical history, but the shadows of their methods remain disturbing and troubling. Herophilos' discoveries changed the course of medicine forever, yet the very people who made these discoveries were victims of a monstrous system that allowed their suffering to be the price of progress. Herophilos and his peers believed that only through the direct observation of living organs could one truly understand the human body. And so they performed cruel surgeries on their subjects, believing it would grant them greater insights into the mysteries of life. But in the end, were the advancements worth the suffering of these individuals? What price was paid for knowledge in Alexandria? It was unjust scientific advancement that took place. It was a dangerous disregard for human life. This practice of vivisection marked a dark chapter in the history of medicine. It was a time when the boundaries between scientific curiosity and moral boundaries were blurred, and when knowledge was gained at the expense of humanity. And it did and stopped there. It spread across cultures and nations and continued. Through time, from ancient Egypt to China to Europe, throughout history, many rulers and scientists were willing to sacrifice the lives of the innocent in the name of knowledge. The search for immortality took many forms, and it was always as we imagine it. Chinese Emperor Qin Shi Huang was obsessed with the idea of eternal life. He had built the Great Wall and created the Terracotta Army. But what he truly desired was immortality. And so he turned to court alchemists, who promised him an elixir of eternal life. The key ingredient was mercury, a substance now known to be incredibly toxic. Yet he believed it would grant him divine endurance. The emperor regularly ingested these mercury-laced concoctions, believing that they would allow him to live forever. But instead of immortality, the potions led to his demise. It was an ironic twist. The very elixirs he trusted to grant him eternal life slowly poisoned him. The emperor's body was eventually entombed with rivers of mercury flowing near his burial site. It's a testament to his obsession with immortality. But what he sought with such desperation ultimately became the cause of his death. His quest for eternal life ended in tragedy, and his legacy became one of toxic death and irony. His tomb remains largely untouched by archaeologists to this day, and modern soil analysis has confirmed the presence of high mercury levels near his resting place. The emperor's search for immortality ended up costing him his life, and while his story is one of great historical importance, it is also one of human folly. An obsession with power, the search for eternal life was not a new one throughout history. Many have sought to defy death in various forms, from the alchemists of the medieval period to the experiments of scientists. In the 18th century, the pursuit of immortality has always been part of the human experience, but perhaps one of the most disturbing aspects of this quest is the way it was intertwined with science. The very thing that was supposed to give humans knowledge and understanding also became a tool of destruction and death. Now let us turn to another chilling chapter in the history of medicine, one that takes us deep into the world of ancient surgeries. Imagine standing in a world with no anesthesia, no antiseptics, yet someone dares to drill a hole into your skull and you survive. This was not a scene of madness, but an ancient medical practice known as trepanation, and it was performed by civilizations across the globe for over 9,000 years, from the mountains of Peru to the battlefields of ancient Greece. This surgical procedure wasn't just a desperate ritual. It was a leap in early medical knowledge. These ancient surgeons didn't have the tools or understanding that we do today, yet they performed these risky operations with remarkable precision. In the Andean world, trepanation reached astonishing levels of refinement. Archaeologists discovered skulls with smooth circular openings and evidence of bone healing, meaning many individuals survived the procedure. Some even survived multiple surgeries, suggesting that it was done on a whim. But with expertise in ancient Greece, the great physician Hippocrates described trepanation as a treatment for head injuries in his 5th century BCE work on injuries of the head. Even then, the goal was precise: to relieve pressure from swelling, treat traumatic brain injuries, or remove shattered bone from battle injuries. Trepanation wasn't something done on a whim. The goal was always medical. It wasn't about curiosity or research, but about survival, even without modern tools and medicines. These ancient cultures were advancing the field of surgery with methods that may seem barbaric to us today, but were revolutionary in their time. What is most fascinating is that these surgeries were performed without the pain relief we rely on today. There was no anesthesia, no sterile environment. Yet these brave individuals underwent it for a chance at survival, and some even lived years after the procedure. Despite the risks it took and the lack of modern understanding, we cannot underestimate the skill involved in these early surgeries. The tools used ranged from obsidian blades to bronze saws designed to avoid damaging the brain. Yet what were the patients subjected to? What was it like to endure this horrific procedure with nothing to dull the pain? We may never know, but we can only speculate on their courage. In ancient times, the very notion of surgery was terrifying, let alone trepanation. A hole drilled into the skull, but these ancient surgeons displayed an astonishing understanding of the human body and its resilience. And so with each attempt to understand the brain and skull, these surgeons were inching closer to modern practices of neurosurgery. Even if their methods were far from perfect, they paved the way for the future, and they did it with raw skill and determination. But while we marvel at the ancient achievements, we also need to look at the darker side of medicine, the side that pushed the boundaries of morality and left deep scars on history. During the 12th to 17th centuries in Europe, an unsettling practice emerged known as medicinal cannibalism. Imagine your headache being treated with powdered remains of an ancient Egyptian mummy. During this time, European doctors, nobles, and even royalty consumed mummia, a substance made from ground-up Egyptian mummies, believing it held powerful healing properties. Preserved over centuries, imported from Egypt, mummia was sold by apothecaries, ground into powders mixed with oils or added to tinctures, and many Europeans believed it could treat a variety of ailments from internal bleeding to the plague. The irony here is that the ancient Egyptians, who developed intricate embalming rituals to preserve their dead, never intended for their mummies to become pharmaceutical products. This practice was born from cultural misunderstandings and superstitions, a fascination with ancient Egypt, and a blind belief in the power of its mystical past. Europe had misinterpreted ancient texts and misread translations, and these misbeliefs led to one of the most bizarre and macabre practices in medicine. But it wasn't just the ancient world that displayed this type of dark curiosity throughout history. There have been numerous attempts to understand the human body in ways that seem incomprehensible to us today, and one of the most startling examples of this occurred in the field of eye surgery. Imagine allowing someone to stab your eye with a sharp instrument, all in the hopes of regaining your sight. This was the case with cataract surgery in ancient times over 2,000 years ago. Ancient physicians in India and Rome attempted to treat cataracts with a method called couching. This involved using a sharp instrument to dislodge the clouded lens of the eye, pushing it downward and out of the visual axis. Surprisingly, this primitive procedure was used widely across ancient civilizations. including in India, where it was described in the Sushruta Samhita, an ancient surgical text from 600 BCE. In Romulus, Cornelius Celsus wrote about a similar technique using bronze or copper needles carefully inserted at the side of the eye, even though there were no antiseptics. No anesthesia, and little understanding of infections some patients regained. Partial sight, but the procedure was highly risky and often led to complications, yet the very fact that ancient civilizations were attempting such invasive surgeries shows their boldness and determination to cure blindness, a problem that had plagued humanity for centuries. Despite the dangers and imperfections of these methods, there was a willingness to try anything in pursuit of healing and restoration, no matter how painful or uncertain it seemed. But the ancient world wasn't just focused on treating disease. Sometimes the body itself was altered intentionally for social or cultural reasons. Take the practice of skull binding in the ancient Andes. It may sound strange to us, but for centuries the Inca and other Andean cultures intentionally reshaped their children's skulls. From as early as 1000 BCE, skull binding involved using tight wrappings, wooden boards, or padded braces to shape an infant's skull into an elongated or flattened form. But this wasn't done for beauty or vanity. It was a practice of identity and status. The shape of one's head signified nobility, social status, or a connection to the divine. In ancient Inca society, elongated skulls were often seen among the elites in the priestly classes. The reshaped skull was a mark of distinction, one that tied individuals to their community and culture. It was just a physical transformation. It was a spiritual one as well, and as archaeologists continued to unearth these modified skulls from burial sites across the Andes, they are uncovering a cultural practice that spoke to the deep social and spiritual beliefs of the time. Skull binding was about much more than aesthetics. It was a statement of identity and connection to something greater than oneself. It was a way to assert one's place in the cosmic order, and the community. The ancient world was filled with practices that pushed the boundaries of medicine and human understanding, from the dissection of the living to the reshaping of skulls, from toxic elixirs to eye surgery. Nice. Quest for knowledge and healing often walked a thin line between discovery and cruelty. And though many of these methods seem horrifying to us today, they represent the beginnings of what would later become modern medicine and surgery. The story of these ancient practices is not just a tale of progress, but one of sacrifice, one of the bodies and lives lost in the pursuit of knowledge. So what do these practices reveal about how different cultures understood the human body and the soul? Comment below and share your thoughts, because as Cicero once said, the diseases of the soul are more dangerous and more numerous than those of the body.